Welcome back everybody to the Wandering Samurai Study, in which we review and analyze every single act told in Rurouni Kenshin, and today's act is Act 33, Bonus, Yahiko's Battle, Part 3, and the finale to this Yahiko mini-arc before Raijuta. I have been enjoying this so much, but this story, I went ahead and read the final page of the chapter, the one that is called The Secret Life of Characters. The page was for Tsubame, and if you read it in the context of the vile, awful things that has come to light about Watsuki, it could turn your stomach. But if you're interested in reading it, do so. But my main takeaway about all this, I pretty much just called it in part one of this little video. The whole point of this story arc was for the sake of tackling the issue of old customs in a new age, people having a difficult time moving on from the past and past traditions. And I think this is something that we deal with even to this day. There are people who just refuse to let go of the past because when they grew up it was a certain way and now things aren't this way. And a lot of the times these things are awful. There's a reason why they're being left in the past. In the case of Tsubame and these people, it was just really nasty people just trying to take advantage of a young girl. And that right there, God, it just kind of thinking about the context of Watsuki. Man, let's do the chapter summary and we'll talk about the actual chapter. The day of the burglary arrives, and just as the men are about to make their move, Yahiko intercepts the men, stealing the key thanks to his pickpocketing skills. Yahiko runs off with the key and the men chase him into a narrow alleyway. The men try to attack all at once but find that they are not able to, allowing Yahiko to fight them off one-on-one. Their boss orders his men to kill Yahiko, but Kenshin and Sanosuke reveal themselves and scare the men off, leaving just Yahiko and the leader to fight. Tsubame shows up to cheer for Yahiko, giving him the strength to win. The day is saved thanks to the the Tokyo Samurai Myojin Yahiko. So the first thing I want to mention is just this little throwaway line that was included at the beginning, where Yahiko steals the key and he gives it thanks to his pickpocketing skills, but yet again he is not sure if this is a good thing. Yeah dude, it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. You've turned a negative into a positive. You could have possibly have been a ninja had you maybe chosen a different path in life, or if a different path may have been presented to him, he could have been a wonderful stealthy ninja. But on a much more serious note, one of the things that have been prevalent throughout this little 3-chapter story is Yahiko's struggle with his public image and the way he wants people to see him and the way others actually see him. And this comes in the way of Tsubame, where she constantly calls him Chan, Yahiko-chan, the honorific for that is most prevalently used for either females or for children in the case of men. The proper social interaction that would happen with two characters that are of the same age and considered equals, not one being the senpai and the other one being the kohai, or vice versa, or one being an adult and one being a child. Yahiko would call Tsubame Tsubame-chan, and Tsubame would call Yahiko Yahiko-kun, and that is what Yahiko wants. But she just keeps calling him Chan, meaning that she sees him as a child. And Yahiko, because he's practicing to become a great swordsman someday, he wants that image. He wants people to recognize his strength. And we'll get back to it. We'll kind of put a little pin on Yahiko himself, or maybe I can mention it now. But all throughout the narrative, she calls him Chan. And so this battle, it's not only just to save the girl, it's also to kind of prove to himself and kind of prove to her that he is a fighter, a person who can protect others, a student of the Kamiya Kushin, somebody who practiced Ketsujin Ken. And so it's really important for Yahiko to win, and I mean he does, and it ultimately works for him at the end. He gets his moment, but even like through all of this, she calls him Chan. In the previous act, she calls him Chan, and she kind of like fidgets and reminds herself that he does not like it, and wounded and just really soul crushed by his defeat, Yahiko tells her that if he can't protect one person, he might as well be called Chan, because he's just a child if he can't save anybody. And so even when he's fighting the men, or where he's like lured them off and Tsubame shows up, she's still calling him Chan. But by the end, after Yahiko wins, she starts calling him Kun. And without even actually being told to, Yahiko didn't have to remind her anymore. It just kind of came out. She recognized him, and I guess kind of won her respect. But on that little pin that I mentioned just a moment ago, the whole reason that Yahiko got a job in the first place was so that he can save up to get a sakabato. And this can coincide with his public image. He's probably insecure about his wooden sword, seeing that most people look at it like a child's toy, considering that he's also a fairly young child. So he wants to save up money so that he can buy himself a sakabato, a reverse blade sword, someday. And again, we're gonna go ahead and pin that for now, again, because I have more points about it, but we'll get to it. So let's go ahead and talk about Tsubame for a sec. As I already kind of mentioned her and the way that she looks at Yahiko and the way Yahiko wants her to look at him. Kaoru actually shows up. Well, all three of the Kamiya Kushin dojo residents show up. Does Sanosuke actually live there? I don't actually think that Sanosuke actually lives at the Kamiya dojo, but he's always there. All of them show up. But on the note of Kaoru showing up, I really just like that without the three of them getting directly involved or actually telling Yahiko that they are going to go and help him. They kind of just helped him from behind and kind of filled in little pockets of space where they could be of use, but never actually did the work for him. Yahiko did the majority of it, but anyways, Kaoru, back to Kaoru. Kaoru, I really just love the way that she I guess believes in Yahiko. She doesn't outright say it, and she doesn't outright say that, hey, you are ready to do this, because Yahiko never actually presented that information to her. She kind of just has to believe in him, and she does it in the way that she interacts with Tsubame, where she tells her that if Yahiko wins, you need to look at Yahiko very differently. You need to put your faith in him, and you need to do what Yahiko is doing right now, and be more secure of yourself, not being willing to be stepped on by other people and be held back by old traditions. Yahiko is fighting so that you can be you in the Meiji era, and Yahiko deserves the same amount of respect. She's doing all of this for her student, and I just really enjoy that it's never just done directly, because the two, they have this relationship where if one of them were to pay a compliment to the other, they wouldn't respond in a very natural way. Presumably they would get embarrassed and then try to play it off with an insult to one another. That's the type of relationship that Yahiko and Kaoru have. So doing it from the back, I think it's just a nice little touch for the student-teacher relationship between the two characters. And with Yahiko actually being in the battle, Yahiko immediately, from taking the keys and running off and having the men chase him, he ran directly into this one alley. And so what this tells me is that Yahiko took his time plotting his rematch with these characters. It's very clear that Kenshin and Sanosuke both knew exactly where Yahiko would go to lend their support in the moment that they needed. I can easily see that the characters were kind of watching him from the sidelines, kind of like how they were following him to the Akabeko when he was being very mysterious. Yahiko planned this out. He very clearly did. He knew exactly where he was going to run. He knew exactly which alley would serve him best. He knew exactly how many men he was going to be fighting, and so how small of a window or a narrow hallway he would need to fight these men one-on-one would be necessary. And I think that it just shows though with like exactly how fast he ran in there and just how quickly Sonosuke and Kenshin both revealed themselves, rather than having to maybe, I don't know, have a panel of Kenshin and Sonosuke either taking the time to look for him. It's as if they knew exactly where he would be. And to take off that pin that I mentioned, the whole reason that Yahiko got a job in the first place, I already mentioned, is the Sakabato. It wasn't actually what any of the other characters were thinking. It kind of just happened to kind of line up that way in that first act. It wasn't for food, it wasn't for Tsubame, and it wasn't for training. Like, all of these things just kind of happened. But it was, as I mentioned, it was for a Sakabato. And I love this detail about why Yahiko got a job. Because he doesn't buy the Sakabato by the end. It just reveals that his motivation for getting a job is to someday have a reverse blade sword. It shows us that he's thinking about the future. It shows us that how much he looks up to Kenshin, how much he wants to be a great swordsman, and rather than just go and get any type of sword that he can get his hands on, he wants this very exact same choice of tool that his mentor, in a way, or the person that he looks up to, his superhero, Kenshin, uses. He wants to be just the same as Kenshin. And as I've mentioned many times before, Yahiko is the surrogate to the audience, to the choice demographic, because I don't necessarily apply anymore, but as a child I surely did. Yahiko is the child of the group. He is the surrogate audience to the narrative, to the cast. So yes, Yahiko wanting a reverse blade sword falls very much in line with his whole place in this narrative. He is the child that wants to be just like the superhero. And I can easily see this being relatable, because as a child, as a young lad myself, I wanted a reverse blade sword. I actually went to a sword shop novelty place, and I asked them if they had a reverse blade sword. The woman behind the counter actually went into the back, and she came back with this reverse blade sword, and on it had a little tag of Rurouni Kenshin. Of course, I didn't have any money at the time, so I never actually bought it, but it just falls so much in line with the whole point of Yahiko. So in that way though, I find it very insulting to or I just don't like that Sanosuke and Kaoru kind of made a joke of it, and they laughed at him. I don't remember if Kaoru actually laughed, but I know for a fact that Sanosuke laughed at the very end. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Act 33 of the Wandering Samurai Study and Act 33 of Rurouni Kenshin. If you like this video and you want to see more, then consider subscribing to the channel and leave a thumbs up and comment down below what did you guys think of this 3-part mini arc. I know that I guess at the time, at the initial run, a lot of people really liked this. Watsuki mentioned in that Secret Life of Characters page that that this story was actually well received by many others, and he would have loved to have continued it, but as they say, the show must go on, and he couldn't direct more attention to this story than he would have liked to. He mentions in his Secret Life of Characters that he really would have liked to have kind of explore what the other characters are doing during their leisure time. But he really had to contain himself and keep the story focused on Yahiko and Tsubame and this issue of the past refusing to die in the new era. I will see you guys all in the next chapter as we start Raijuta. Bye, cha.